Close your eyes for a moment and imagine stepping into a British school corridor in the 1950s. There's a sharp scent of floor polish, chalk dust swirling in shafts of morning sunlight, and the gentle thunder of sensible shoes on old wooden floors. Your hair is slicked neatly to the side, no room for stray locks here, and your uniform is pressed to perfection. The atmosphere is a curious mix of anticipation and quiet fear, because everyone knows what comes next. The rules. So many rules. Stand up straight when an adult walks in. No hands in pockets. Speak only when spoken to. You catch the stern gaze of a teacher who could silence an entire class with a single raised eyebrow. The headmaster's voice, echoing through the corridor, recites a litany of must do S and never ever S that shape every moment of the school day. Break the wrong rule, and you're in for a shock, sometimes quite literally. This wasn't just education. It was a carefully orchestrated ritual, setting the tone for everything that would follow. But why did it feel so normal then? To truly understand those relentless school rules, we need to step back and look at Britain itself in the early 1950s. The war had ended, but its shadow lingered over every household and classroom. Rationing was still in force for some essentials, and most families were living with a kind of thrift and caution that shaped their outlook on life. Discipline wasn't just a school policy. It was a national virtue, drilled into everyone from the playground to Parliament. Parents wanted stability for their children after years of upheaval, and teachers were expected to deliver it with firm hands and watchful eyes. Classrooms reflected the mood of the era. Rows of sturdy wooden desks, an ever-watchful teacher at the front, and an atmosphere that favored order above comfort. There was little room for personal expression or chaos. Instead, rules were the scaffolding that kept everything upright, a bulwark against the unpredictability of the outside world. Each rule, whether about posture or silence, was there to reinforce habits of respect, diligence, and obedience, qualities believed essential to rebuild a nation still reeling from loss and uncertainty. Teachers and parents alike feared disorder, believing it could lead to moral decline or wasted opportunity. School, in many ways, was an extension of the home, carrying the burden of hopes for a better, safer future. When we look at those strict routines, we see not just control, but a society trying to steady itself. And yet, even within those rigid walls, childhood found ways to peek through. Let's take a stroll down memory lane and unlock the old rulebook. 12 pillars of post-war school life, each more remarkable than the last. Some will make you laugh, others wince, but all speak of a Britain worlds away from today's classrooms. Rule 1. Stand up whenever an adult entered the room. No exceptions. The scraping of chairs was like an orchestra, a rustle of collective respect, or was it fear? You could be halfway through jotting a note or sneaking a boiled sweet, but if Miss or Sir walked in, up you'd go. It was a sign of discipline, but also a signal. You were always being watched. Rule 2. No talking at lunch. Imagine a canteen brimming with chatter. Now erase the sound. Lunchtimes were near-silent affairs, the only noise coming from the clatter of plates or the snap of a custard skin. If you dared whisper to a friend, the dinner lady's glare was enough to freeze you mid-mouthful. It was thought to promote good manners and prevent chaos, but it made for some tense sandwich eating. Of course, that didn't stop some from developing the art of silent communication, a raised eyebrow, a passing note, a quick smirk when backs were turned. Rule 3. Uniforms worn with absolute precision. Shirts tucked, ties straight, shoes shined. Woe betide the child whose socks slipped down or who dared to turn up in scuffed shoes. Inspectors sometimes visited, and being sent home to present yourself properly wasn't just a threat, it was a promise. Today, the casual trainers and colorful jumpers would have caused apoplexy in the staff room. Rule 4. Handwriting mattered. No ballpoint pens, only fountain pens or pencils, and woe to the left-hander forced to master copperplate with ink-stained fingers. Each letter had to flow, each loop measured. Ink blots were met with tuts and a stern word. Some schools even handed out pen licenses, a curious mix of pride and pressure. Now, in an age of keyboards and emojis, the ritual of penmanship feels almost mythical. Rule 5. Hands always visible. No pockets, no desk hiding. Some teachers believed hidden hands were a sign of mischief, or worse, idleness. You'd be called out in front of everyone if caught with your arms under the table. In today's world of fidget toys and under-desk snacks, it's almost unimaginable. Rule 6. Silence in corridors. Moving between lessons was like a silent procession, broken only by the squeak of shoes and the odd nervous cough. Any hint of running or shouting could land you a detention or worse. The aim was order, always order, but you could feel the tension simmering. One misplaced laugh and the spell would break. Rule 7. No sweets, no gum. Sweets were contraband, gum practically criminal. If caught, you'd hand over your precious stash and watch it thrown into the teacher's bin, sometimes in full view of your classmates. Of course, resourceful children developed elaborate hiding spots, inside socks, hollowed-out rulers, even hidden in the lining of a blazer. Rule 8. Lines and essays for every infraction. Late homework, talking out of turn, or even a crooked tie could mean pages and pages of "I must not" in perfect script. For some, it was a meditative punishment, for others, pure drudgery. Today, it would seem more suited to Dickens than a modern school. Rule 9. Corporal punishment, administered with slipper, cane, or ruler. This was the rule everyone remembers but few miss. One sharp whack for misbehavior, sometimes public, often swift. It was meant to deter, but it lingered. Fear was a teacher too. In hindsight, it's astonishing how accepted this was. Most of us would flinch at the thought of such discipline in a classroom now. Rule 10. No left-handed writing. It seems almost comical now, but left-handers were forced to correct themselves, as if nature had erred. Teachers hovered, rulers at the ready to enforce conformity. Some children became ambidextrous by necessity, but many recall the awkwardness and frustration. Rule 11. Speaking only when spoken to. Children's opinions were rarely invited, and answering back was the cardinal sin. Lessons were mostly one way, with the teacher's word final. Today, the emphasis on pupil voice and dialogue is a world away from the hush that used to fall over classrooms. Rule 12. Singing the national anthem, often daily. Assembly began with "God Save the Queen," sung with gusto, sometimes pride, sometimes mere habit. It was a unifying moment, though perhaps not always heartfelt. Compare that to today, where such rituals are rare and even controversial. Each rule was enforced with unyielding seriousness, but children, being children, always found ways to bend, twist, or outright flout them. Passing notes under desks, perfecting the silent giggle, or sneaking a sweet when no one looked. These little rebellions were acts of resilience, tiny sparks of individuality in a system that prized conformity above all. When we look back, it's tempting to laugh at the strangeness or shudder at the strictness. Yet, for those who lived it, these rules were simply the air we breathed, unquestioned, accepted, and in their own way, formative. Today, we can hardly imagine a classroom so rigid, so formal, or so utterly dependent on the unspoken contract between child and adult. The world has shifted, and with it, our expectations of childhood and education. Yet, before we pass judgment or dismiss it all as outdated, perhaps it's worth asking, what did these rules actually teach us? And what lessons, if any, might still matter today? Why did schools go to such lengths to enforce these rules? At first glance, it all seems about control, an endless effort to keep children in line. But beneath the surface, there's more. In a society rebuilding after war, structure brought comfort. Rules taught us punctuality, tidiness, respect for authority, qualities that parents and teachers believed would build strong citizens. Even the most peculiar rituals, like standing for adults or singing the anthem, wove children into a wider national story, shaping identity as much as manners. Of course, not every rule was rooted in wisdom. Some were simply hangovers from Victorian times, tradition for tradition's sake. Others, like the strict ban on left-handedness or corporal punishment, now seem more about conformity than care. Yet, in their way, these rules reflected adult anxieties, a fear of chaos, of slipping standards, of a future uncertain. Looking back, it's tempting to see only the absurdity, but many remember the sense of order, safety, and even pride that came from following the rules. Still, it's worth asking, were these lessons truly about preparing us for life, or just about making things easier to manage? The answer is often more complicated than it appears. Even in the strictest classrooms, children found ways to push back. There was an unspoken art to rule-bending. The furtive exchange of sweets during break, notes slipped under desks with coded nicknames, and the thrill of a whispered joke that barely escaped the teacher's ear. Some developed entire systems of signals, a tap on the desk, a whistle on the playground, ways to say what couldn't be said out loud. The very rigidity of the rules bred camaraderie, forging friendships out of shared risk and clever defiance. Getting caught meant a red face and a stern word, but the memory of pulling off a secret giggle or hiding a sherbet lemon felt worth it. These small acts of rebellion weren't just mischief. They were a celebration of childhood resilience and inventiveness. Looking back, it's clear that even the tightest rulebook couldn't quite contain the spirit of youth. Close your eyes and let yourself drift back, not just to the rules, but to the everyday moments that gave school life its particular flavor.